All right. To begin the April 26th Economic Development Committee meeting, we do have a quorum, but we'll do a quick roll call because we have members online and in person. So, Paul, when you're ready.
I will start in person. Member Deacon.
Here.
Wynn.
Here.
Burns.
Here.
Newsma.
Here.
Kelly.
Here.
Reed.
Here.
Nisi.
I'm here online.
Thank you. Harris.
Present.
Okay. And next up, we have approval of the meeting minutes for March 22nd. If we can have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right. It's been properly moved by, let's say, Councilmember Reed and seconded by Councilmember Newsma. Are there any changes? Seeing none. All those in favor? Should we do a roll call since just people are online?
Yeah.
Let's do a roll call.
Okay.
Do I vote if I was not at that meeting?
You don't have to do a roll call.
You can abstain. Yeah.
Yeah, but
You can, but
Is it roll call or not?
your choice.
you don't have to do a roll call. It may be easier.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, any nays? Any abstentions?
Abstaining.
All right, next up, we have, public comments. Paul.
Did we have any video? Sorry, hybrid public comment? No. Anybody in person signed up?
Would anybody here today like to make a public? No? All right, moving on to items for consideration. We have, Aspire Evanston Community Healthcare Workforce Development Program. Who will be introducing? Paul.
Yeah, so,
You wanna kick us off?
yes.
Okay, so we have Nathan Norman, our Workforce Development Manager, City of Evanston.
Sure. That'd be great, yeah, if you want to tell me. Sure, correct. There's a video at the end.
Like 60 seconds.
That's your fiddle with full track.
So thank you so much. So good evening, everyone. My name is Nathan Norman, and I serve as the manager for the Workforce Development Division. I'd like to thank the chair and the members of the Economic Development Committee for allowing us the opportunity to present tonight. I'd also like the committee to know that since the Aspire Community Workforce Program was established in 2022, we've created viable options for students graduating without a plan or those taking non-traditional paths. In addition, we've been successful in building a foundation that introduces youth and young adults to both employment and various career exploration opportunities in healthcare. North Shore is deeply invested in the Aspire program and has committed another $200,000 in funding to support Aspire. As our presentation will indicate, our ask tonight is for the city's support to continue growing the Aspire program in partnership by committing an additional $200,000 in ARPA funds. Contingent on the City of Evanston's commitment, the Finnegan Foundation will also provide an additional $200,000 as well. This gives us a bigger bang for our buck. As a lifelong Evanstonian and also as a staff member for the City of Evanston, I genuinely see this funding support as the impetus for a sustainable workforce development program that provides economic impact for Evanston residents, funds that flow directly back into Evanston. As the Aspire program is currently immersed in several key partnerships, one with MEAC, the Marriage Employment Advisory Council, Oakton College, Evanston Township High School, and of course our core partnership between the City of Evanston and the Aspire program. So that said, I'd like to turn it over to our community partners at North Shore Health System, and I want to introduce Vice President Samir Desai.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Samir Desai. I'm the VP for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and People Strategy at North Shore. It's a real honor to be here today. Thank you very much for hosting us. And thank you, Nathan, for that introduction. And it's been a real joy in the partnership working with Nathan Norman and the Economic Development Council and the work that we've been able to do in partnership. The impact that we've been able to make in just 1 year is really profound, and I had the opportunity to sit with a room full of 15 EPHS students just a couple weeks ago that started a job shadow program at North Shore. And it was just amazing to see the excitement in their eyes, and luckily without the mask, to be able to see the smiles on their faces, giving up their spring break to be able to participate in a week-long program where they got to rotate through 2 different departments at North Shore, whether it be laboratory or other types of services, pharmacy and other ones. And that's just one indication of the program that we've been able to run over the last year in partnership with all the different partners in Evanston. All the funding that we've received through North Shore, through the great partnership with Evanston and ARPA Fund and the Finnegan Foundation, all that money goes directly back to Evanstonians in the form of job shadow opportunities, internship programs, scholarships, and jobs. And in the last year, we've been able to impact over 50 Evanstonians with those opportunities. We had over 33 summer interns, 5 that converted into jobs right after high school for those that were looking for opportunities that weren't necessarily college bound, although they may pursue certifications after that. And we also created a scholarship fund with Oakton College that has led to 5 scholarship opportunities to get all for Evanstonians to be able to get certificates to be able to grow their careers. And the careers is really what this is about, that we're excited to partner at the hospital here in Evanston to be able to create not just jobs, but real meaningful careers for members of the Evanston community that can help grow themselves as well as their families and their communities around them. As we look forward here, one of the things that you'll see in the presentation, the materials we hand out, we've really been able to make an impact across all the wards across Evanston, and that's something that we're pretty proud of. It's been, again, a great partnership with the city of Evanston and ETHS to do so. Going forward, what we're looking at doing with additional funding is expanding this program in the second year of the program to impact over 100 Evanstonians, to increasing internships to 65 this summer. We already have 52 lined up. And one of the exciting things is that we're looking at 18 to 25 and 18 to 30-year-olds as well. Those that get past the high school system and need additional guidance. A couple more slides. Oh, yeah, we can go forward here. One more after this. Oh, and one more. There we go. Perfect. Yeah, thank you very much. We're still in Zoom mode, aren't we? The other thing that we're looking at is not just summer interns, but expanding that throughout the year. Again, really targeting those that are post-high school that don't necessarily have the support structures that ETHS has really built out to be able to provide opportunities. And the opportunities, just to make it really concrete, is that for people of that age to be able to see something that they didn't know existed, the fact that there's lab techs available, jobs like that, patient care techs, or sterile processing techs, that can lead to higher paying, career enriching job careers in the future. And coming out of the program last year, where students or individuals would say, I didn't even know something like this existed. I thought my only option was to become a nurse or a doctor. Not just that, but we have jobs in HR, we have jobs in security, in cyber tech, that we have internships for and that we're hiring into from Evanston. So with these over 100 opportunities, you see some of the impact here on this slide from students. And we had one student in my department, Ayana, who was really terrific, energetic, passionate, and really got a really good idea of what she wanted to do going forward. Ended up working in the staff support tech last year and is looking to come back this year as well. But you can hear from us. We'd rather you hear from one of the individuals that went through this, so if that works. On the, I think in the
Next slide.
yeah, in the next slide, you can click on that link, I think, to be able to get at the video.
We're gonna do 2 things here. One, we're gonna try it.
Okay.
I need to do some of the audio. Just give me a second.
Here, if while you're pulling that up, Paul, one last thing that I'd like to annotate for the committee is the fact that we're going forward, we're looking at, because this is a collaboration, we're looking at augmenting the program into the city of Evanston, meaning that we'll have positions here at the city in public health that are adjacent to healthcare pathways at North Shore. And so we've taken a look at different things in communicable health and other places like public safety. We have security guards here in this building. We have security guards at North Shore. And so whatever a student is interested in doing, whatever a young person, whatever an older person who's looking to enter the workforce here in Evanston is interested in doing, we would like to have a plethora of options for individuals in Evanston. So that's key.
All right, let's give this a whirl.
Okay.
Two things I might have to try, so let's try this quick.
We're rooting for you, Paul.
I'm nervous.
Yeah.
I got it on the first day.
Yeah, but no, it's gonna be an audio issue. Okay. So, let's do this. Oh. Just take a second.
No problem.
What I'm trying to avoid is the echoing that happens, and we also have a very strange setup here, so forgive me.
I think while you play the video, just mute.
Gotta do something, right? So somebody's gotta, like, it's gonna come out of here, so I think I have to mute that.
And some of them are smarter, they just know
All
how.
right, you're right.
After 3 years, we still try to figure it out, right?
Yeah. All right, we're gonna try this. Get ready. Not gonna work. Okay, that's cool.
Basically, what she was gonna say is that this is a very important program. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll let them, try to address the echo and we'll open it up for Q&A.
I'm very excited about the internet, which I intend with target and target to reach. I really wanted to do this summer internship because during spring break,
All right, we're not on.
Oh, it's okay.
And then to the. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to be here. Most of you know I'm the chair of the Mayor's Employee Advisory Council, which is all volunteers and all of it. I'm down in the grassroots of what these guys are doing, and this has to do with the students at the high school. We run the spring job shadow program and also the summer IKIT, summer internship program for graduating seniors, and now some juniors that did job shadow a few weeks ago. They wanted to go into the internship, and we're going to work on that. The important part is the job shadow kids, and there were, I'll say the real number. There were 54 of them, but 16 of them went to North Shore, and we paid them. We paid them $300 to do it, because I don't believe anybody should work as an intern or a summer job without getting something in return. The kids were ecstatic about their experience, and I want to compliment North Shore because they actually worked hard to set it up right. You know, it's one thing to be a job shadow, but hey, follow me around and get coffee. That didn't happen. We made sure they had something to do. The summer IKIT program is coming up. We're probably going to have somewhere between 15 and 20 kids going there. Okay. Healthcare is the #1 area of interest for anybody that applied for the job shadow program or applied for the summer intern program. These both programs doubled from last year. Okay. And they're going over there. And the real part is now these kids are going to get paid for the summer internship. They're going to get that solid experience. And what we've all agreed is that if the summer internship goes really well and you've got a position, hire them. And I think we're going to probably see more kids hired into that particular program as we move forward. The other part of this, now I think all of you read some of the notices in the paper about ETHS getting a $1.2 million to invest in a healthcare training facility in the building. It's going to give the kids, the young people, the opportunity to get a certificate of either a CNA, certified nursing assistant, or, but the CNA is the other one? I think so, but it's another certification, but it's a certification they can earn at the school, and it's not their diploma. But the other part is there's a practicum. You got to have a little on site. You know, it's one thing to have, I don't want to say a dummy, but a mannequin in a bed. But it's another thing to see it and practice it and see what's going on. So I think the Aspire program, and I have the great fortune of listening to people around the state. This thing got off the ground faster than almost any program I've seen with the Illinois school systems, but the Illinois Career and Excellence Network. And there's 17 of us that are leadership community. So this is a real deal. And the really good thing is the money went right where it's supposed to go. And I think if we can keep this thing getting even bigger, I think this is excellent for the community. The other part of this is not every kid's going to like healthcare at the end, but they're going to get that job experience. They're going to get that resident builder, and they'll get a better idea of what they want to do. So, and stay here. So I want to support what these guys are doing. And anyway, thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you.
All right, now, any questions, or comments from committee members? Okay.
I have questions. I have a couple questions. And one maybe is for the team, and one is maybe for staff. Has there been conversations with St. Francis? So it's a great model, but I'm curious as to what the conversations have been with our other healthcare system in that.
Let me answer that. I'll get in the picture. We have had in the past programs with Avita or Ascension or whatever they are today. They've been really difficult to work with because they've had so much turnover in their management. And we still have a discussion connection, but they haven't signed up for anything at this point. This model, and you're right, the model is replicatable, and it has great meaning, I think. And the demand for healthcare careers in Evanston is probably the biggest employment picture outside of Western and maybe the city and school. But it's there, and I think when they're ready, the Mayor's Employer Advisory Council will swing them into action when we can get them there.
Okay. And then one question for staff. Remind me, Paul, if you would, we had a conversation where there was a team from the Mather that had a healthcare program. Can you help me remember where we left that conversation? Because I just don't remember.
I would like some help from my colleague on that.
Good, I'm glad I'm not the only one.
It was,
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. What's the question again? I apologize.
So the team from the Mather came and presented a program with, I think they were city funding, and I don't recall where we left that conversation.
Okay, thank you. So that program is called Emerge, and it's ran through Mather. As we know, Mather is a lot smaller than North Shore.
Right.
However, that was funded. It was a $58,100 match. So that was funded. It is a workforce program that also exposes Evanston residents to various industries at Mather, clinical and non-clinical tracks as well. With that program, it's focused on direct employment after like 6 weeks and different things like that. But it's some differentiation. It differs from the Aspire program. So.
Similar question regarding connections for the homeless and especially residents of the Margarita Inn. There's potential pool of labor pool there that could use some workforce development training. I want to make sure you're connected with that potential candidate group as well.
Correct. So thankfully, our city council prioritizes workforce development in Evanston. So we just hired a career development coordinator who is immersed in community engagement and is reaching out to those entities to see how we can align our services to streamline efforts. Like you just suggested, absolutely. I think that there's synergy to be created, and we're looking for opportunities to do that with those groups.
I also want to look into the numbers a little bit. And the request of the city is $200,000.
Correct.
we just double matched, a third or, another 200 from North Shore and another third from a private donor.
Yes.
So $600,000 total. Could we pull back up the slide where we're looking at the number of individuals that are involved in this program and do some quick dollar per person math?
And the numbers thank you for that too, Councilman Newsman. The numbers for that though, and it will vary because a lot of individuals, they go, in Aspire, yes, it's the salary portion, but attached to that is also credential attainment, stackable credentials with Oakland College. So while you're going through Aspire, you also have the opportunity to get a certificate in whatever field or industry that you're in as well. So that amount can vary per intern.
Yeah, I think this is a great program. I just want to make sure that we're spending the money efficiently.
Yes, and we've been very judicious, as you can tell. We didn't just burn through all the budget. We want to spend this year evaluating. Yeah.
If I could highlight, if I may, that, we're not asking for the money all to be spent in 1 year.
Okay.
Even the original funding, we didn't spend it in 1 year. We have that, and we're very judicious about not just spending it, but building up the program. And what we see is the 2 years of funding, this program will be sustainable for at least the next 5 years. And I'm confident the North Shore support will be able to sustain it even after that.
So this initial investment of $600,000 will get you through 5 years?
Yeah, our projections are at least through 5 years.
So $120,000 a year. And that is for 33, well, these numbers we see.
Approximately 50 people, yes.
And we have a program coordinator who facilitates the program, and we pay that person
So
as well.
it's some staff salary,
Yes.
some,
In the city of Evanston.
some compensation for the students that are involved.
Yeah,
Okay.
Paul, can you?
Knowing that it's spread out over 5 years makes the math a lot.
yeah,
Absolutely.
Makes
yeah, I can see where you're going with that, so, absolutely.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for anticipating my question.
I have a question.
Councilmember Harris.
Thank you so much. And what is Oakton? What are they providing? I know the classes and certification, but have we, because I'm at Oakton, been asked to participate financially in any form or fashion?
Sure. I mean, no, Oakland has not been asked to participate financially. However, the Oakland's key role in the partnership is to facilitate the scholarship and the credential attainment opportunity. So individuals can go to Oakland, and Oakland provides any training and credentials and scholarships for that individual as they matriculate through the Aspire program.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kelly.
Yeah, similar question. I want to support this. I think it's absolutely make sure this gets funded. I just wondered how the decision to come to the city, Northwestern got its education, Northwestern got a really nice funding from ARPA, as you know, Oakton, as the high school. I'm just wondering if it could be alternated between these different institutions. I'm just wondering if there was any thought about, or what the thought process was in coming to this. Again, I supported it. I wanted to support it.
Well, I think we started out doing it this way, and I think we just came back to a similar thing. I think that we've been so immersed in our community partnership and in this collaboration that we really didn't color outside the lines because we wanted to be efficient. And so I think that's why we took this course of action, if that makes sense.
Sure.
There's also some perspective of just speaking from a North Shore angle on it, that, you know, we want to make sure that we're partnering with the city in a way that is most meaningful to the city. And sometimes when you get lots of different partners involved, it starts to get a little dispersed, and then there's different interests out there. So we really want to keep this focus as well.
Member D.
Thank you. I have a question for staff. I want to clarify, of the funding ask, 200,000, it's being requested from ARPA funds. So if we say, if I understand correctly, if we say yes, then we are thereby saying no to other opportunities that would be funded by ARPA, right? So part of this is not just determining whether this is a worthy program, but is it more worthy than other funding requests? Is that correct?
That is implied in the recommendation of City Council, and City Council would once again have to decide what priority it wants to take that from. right? Because attached to the packet was an updated spreadsheet, the current priorities of the council.
Page 12 of 190.
Yeah, Member Deegan, is that all?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
Councilmember Wynn.
So when you were saying this is enough funding to support the program for the next 5 years, do you anticipate the number of participants going up or staying at this level?
We anticipate them going up. Yeah, absolutely. And because part of what we're doing is, we talked about Oakton, we're also then forming partnerships with some other higher ed institutions to expand the certification opportunities and build a scholarship program through the city of Evanston that opens that up. We can increase the certification. And with that, we can increase the number of hires back into North Shore into higher level jobs. So we see it expanding that way. The other way we see it expanding is focusing on top of ETHS, the 18 to 30-year-old population, and expanding that scholarship or internship and doing that throughout the year.
And one avenue in which we're exploring is the the non-clinical track. So North Shore has opportunities in HR. We have, again, public safety opportunities. And so we want to expand Inspire to encompass all of those additional opportunities.
May I make a comment also? Thank you. ETHS graduates about 850 kids a year. Of those 850, about 170 to 200 don't go to college. And of the ones that do go, another 30% of those don't make it through the first year. Wow. So look at the pool of and please don't misunderstand. You know, this is not numbers that are so bad at ETHS. These are numbers that are spread all over the school district. Okay, and it is a public reported number from the state of education. But the point is, what happened this year when the kids started talking to the kids last year about healthcare, the program doubled. Got to double the number of kids talking about the program. It's going to grow. And most of the kids that we did this year are kids that weren't going to college. There are a few of them that really wanted to go. It's fine if you want to go, but make sure you know what you're going for. So most of the kids, they hadn't got that college plan. I'm sure, because we thought last year, a couple of kids are going to say, hey, maybe I do want to go to college because I want to do it. But that's a decision they get to make. So as far as growing, yeah, I think it is going to get bigger. And obviously the healthcare community can absorb a lot of talent. A lot of room for that.
Councilman Reed. Reed.
Yes, I blanked all of my question.
I think News was next, and then
Yeah.
Councilman Claire after. Kelly.
Picking up on what Member Deacon said, I want to look at that ARPA allocation on page 12 of our packet. And let's note that we have approximately $500,000 of interest income coming in from the ARPA funds that we have not yet spent. So that's a good thing. But since we're getting towards the bottom of the barrel of our ARPA fund here, we are going to have to make some choices, and there's opportunity costs. So I have a question for Paul or whoever else on staff might be able to answer. What is the current status of the Whole and Free Foods request?
Yes. So expect to see the Trish Thomas of Whole and Free Foods presenting at the city council meeting on May 8th. As a follow-up to the recommendation that the committee provided several months ago. I can't recall which meeting it was. She has an update and she is continuing to seek funds. In the meantime, between now and then, I'm trying to figure out ways to offset that ask. So it isn't all coming from our fund. Okay. So we might have a couple of ways to chip away at that.
All right, so that is still live.
It's still alive. It has
Possibility.
It's a little bit different, but you'll hear about it.
Okay.
Minor change.
And with that $500,000 in interest income, we're still a little bit under allocated to everything that we want to do. If I'm reading to the tune of 1.88 million.
Yes.
Right. So if we just, and the $200,000 ask here is the tied for third or fourth, I guess. So it's not the biggest one in front of us. So there's the Whole and Free Foods for $550, the Small Business Assistance Program for $500, the Mental Health Living Room for $350, and then this one and for $200, and another one for $200,000, additional funding for social services, mental health care. Add all those together, and that is 1.8 million more than we have. I'm interpreting everything.
That's correct.
So we can't do everything. Time to make some tough choices.
And before we go to Councilmember Reed, 'cause he hasn't spoken yet, just so we don't spend too much time on this, I think the best venue to sort all that out is probably council, and not necessarily the Economic Development Committee. I think what's before us today is just if we want to advance this to council so we can continue to have this discussion. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Councilman Reed.
Yeah, and we don't have Sarah here, but I do wonder, given that that the plan is to spend these funds over, a few years, if this is ARPA eligible, given certainly the money will have been transferred to Aspire before, but I just don't know if, given the ARPA guidelines, the timeline would match up. If it does, then I'm happy to entertain this further.
We'll have Community Development Director Flax verify that. I would imagine that funding would be spent by 2027 at that line.
Yeah.
But we'll
Yeah, because we can certainly prioritize that funding first before the North Shore funding kicks in. So we can certainly absolutely abide by any guidelines for the rules.
And we sort of kind of did that by using sort of our ARPA funding towards attracting the Aspire program coordinator's salary, so that it's all accounted for. We know what goes in, what comes out, and so that's that first before Aspire and then foundation funds are used.
Councilmember Kelly.
Who's the contact person for the program? Like, it would be Nathan, it's you, and then at North Shore.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what's your name?
Samir. Yeah, absolutely.
Councilmember-
It is absolutely, all the funds are allocated to the city of Evanston. So Nathan, owns that, we govern the program.
Councilmember Warren.
Well, I'm prepared to send this on to the city council at this point. I mean, we have been trying to develop a good, strong workforce development program in Evanston for years, and this is the most tangible.
We can't hear online. Thank you.
Did it fix all that? Because it's important, those things. Media, if they're online, and everybody online, I think they have to hear it or something like that. But, all right. you can continue.
So I'm saying I'm ready to support this and send it to council tonight so that we can weigh all of the choices that we have. And they're hard choices to make, but I do think this is really the kind of investment that ARPA money is designed for, investing in human capital to create really a workforce development pathway that will continue onward into the future.
Funds go back in the office.
And it's a 2-for-1 deal, so that's another great thing. When you get to prioritization, I get it, I have to do that as well. Tough decisions, but really appreciate that support, thank you.
I like the double match.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments? I'll just quickly jump in, and I think certainly as long as I've been, civically aware in Evanston, I grew up here, so I say civically aware is we've always talked about trying to forge these type of relationships with anchor institutions. It's always like a dream that seems just out of reach, but so close where it feels like we should be able to get something done. And I think we have here, which is really special. and also support moving this forward for further consideration. So thank you, for presenting us to us today. We got one more?
Yeah.
Councilman Reed, yeah.
So the hospital itself, for many of these positions, are these positions actually, if folks were to move beyond this buyer program and be looking for full-time employment, would these be positions that are actually employed by the hospital, or are these contract positions?
So employed by the hospital. Yeah, either the hospital or the medical group, or clinics, but yeah, directly employed.
Okay.
And we've been doing that already.
Yeah, so, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we need people. So it's a win-win.
Did somebody make a motion for this? I
Yeah.
can't remember. Was it? Okay, cool. All right, if there's no other discussion, we'll take a roll call on this.
Can we pause for a minute?
Yes.
Did we move and second this item? I don't recall that.
I don't remember, yeah.
I will move.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Approval.
Yeah, thank you, Nick.
Second.
It's been, now moved by Councilmember Reed and seconded by Councilmember Kelly. Seeing no further discussion, you want to call the roll?
Councilmember Reed,
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Newsma.
Aye.
Burns.
All right.
Quinn.
Aye.
Lincoln.
Aye.
Harris.
Aye.
Panisi.
I believe I have to abstain today.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Hey, to declare why,
Sorry.
you have to state why you're abstaining.
Member Panisi, can you please describe for the record why you have to abstain?
Sure. So while I have agreed to serve an additional term on the Minority Women Evanston Business Evanston Development Committee, my appointment has not yet been confirmed.
I actually don't even think an abstention then is in order, because the way I read the email is that she's just not supposed to vote at all, but you invited her to,
Yeah, she's not a member. of it.
yeah,
I got you.
so I don't think she needed to abstain at all, but that doesn't really matter.
So we'll have
Already
the
happened.
record reflect that.
Yeah.
That the matter passed
Yes,
on a vote of
unanimous. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
All right, so next up, we have items for discussion. If someone wants to move item A, please.
I'll make the motion. This is the 2023 to 2025 Economic Development Strategic Work Plan.
All right, it's been properly moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Properly moved, and, by Councilmember Newsome, and seconded by Councilmember Wood. Paul?
Thank you. Good evening, members of the committee. At the last meeting, we were directed to try to come up with a way to help the committee frame kind of a prioritization and a kind of, or literally a work planning strategy around implementing the numerous recommendations and action items that are in the Evanston Thrives report. Just to give you a bit of history, before we embarked on Evanston Thrives, we would do an annual work plan that typically included just some kind of wide-ranging objectives like workforce development or business attraction and retention. And we would go out and do those things, and there were no measures, there were no indicators. We would do lots of report backs, but we weren't really measuring our success and our impact. I think with the new city council, and particularly under Chair Burns on this committee, there's been a push, and I think Councilmember Newsma, and I guess everybody, so I'm naming everybody now, including Councilmember Reed, there's a real push for like data-rich kind of analysis. So it's new, and this is our first attempt to really wrap around identifying indicators and measures and outcomes for our plan. So forgive me in advance, because this will be a little clunky, but I wanted to kind of, if you haven't read the packet, I'm going to ask you to please take a look at this, maybe a little bit of homework. And I know you have no time for homework. I really understand that. I get that. But I think it's going to take a little bit of time. I'm not convinced we can do it all tonight. I will leave that up to the chair to guide how we want to proceed. But we did, I want to go through some things that we, let me pause there. Let me show an approach I'm trying to take, and this is gonna be clunky because I have to share it with everybody, but first let's do this. So you all saw a copy of the Evanston Thrives implementation matrix. I deeply appreciate the consultant putting this into kind of an actionable checklist. I am going to take an additional step and simplify this because this is a lot for my eyes, but it's all there. So you can always go back and reference this. But how I was hoping we could approach the work planning process is on a time frame of 2023 to 2025. That aligns with the current council's remaining term, and also will allow us to focus on the things that are most implementable up front. It also ties nicely with something that Councilmember Reed brought up earlier about the kind of timelines on spending the ARPA. So we need to get those actions identified and prioritized. Now, the consultant, and what I'd like to do for you separately, if we continue this conversation beyond tonight, is identify the items that show up as in this particular recommendation. This is a priority, right? So they've got systematized data management. That's stuff that we can start right now. Our team can do that without any additional investment from ARPA or a consultant. We can start getting to work on working internally. So what I want to do is take all of these priorities, and I've started to do that. Let me to the next slide, and forgive me again, a little bit funky. All right, so team, I'm going back into see this. So what I'm slowly getting to is this idea of putting all of the action items. So again, this is a working draft, but I want to present the idea here is the recommendation under business supports. Here are the early action priorities. Improve data collection, streamline our internal processes, rebalance, distribute resources to better support business needs. You can read them, right? And then next to them are specific actions that we can take or not. It just depends on what the council recommends. And we don't have to listen to everything the consultant recommends, but some of these are pretty solid. And then we want to add indicators or outcomes to them, right? So again, it's a little bit of an eye chart, but as you can see, we're just drafting this right now because this will also be part of the city council planning goal session that you're having in an upcoming meeting. And some of this will be baked into a more simplified format. But for example, as we're working on rebalancing and equitably distributing our city resources, one of the thoughts is let's be very active in targeting campaigns to MWDB businesses. Let's not be passive and just wait for people to apply, but literally knock on doors, make phone calls, do business meetings. We used to do this a few years ago where we would set up a series of business interviews to get feedback. And then we can also, we'll have in our hands printed, dare I say, maybe even laminated in some cases. I witnessed a laminated collateral this weekend from my team. I was really impressed. We had a meeting on Howard Street. Just do more things like that where we're literally not just depending on our website, but leaving something behind, and then encouraging them to apply, and then changing the trajectory so it's not the same group of businesses or business districts. It's rolling it out to a whole new group. So that's how I'd like to kind of look at each of the early actions in the Evanston Thrives plan. I also have a note here to remind myself that we need to figure out a timeline. We're going to spend, if it's 3 million or 1 million, whatever the number ends up being, we need to do that early and figure out what those items that we normally wouldn't choose to fund with the general fund. The example, it may not be the best example. There's been a lot of talk about doing concerts in our either downtown or business districts. Let's get it's an overused example. I'm sorry I keep repeating it, but let's get a kind of trailer style cargo container or some kind of form of a stage that can be easily transported, sold out, have nice concerts in Independence Park, Fountain Square, Warrington Avenue, Church and Dodge on the corner where the market is. So that's gonna cost, Howard Street, Mulford Viaduct, right? There's all kinds of ideas. So that I want to get on the radar early and come to the committee and council with, here's how we want to like really invest that $3 million that's still out there, or whatever happens to it. I also think we need a series of inputs from end users, perhaps. I think of space, the concert, you know, what would they recommend we do? What does the downtown organization do? Or what does the Main Dumpster Mile think they need? And then work together to build that placemaking infrastructure. But I'm doing this for each of the sections of Thrives. And then there are a few things that are not part of Thrives, right? They're kind of integrated, but there's some West Evanston redevelopment planning that you all know about that we've been working on along the railroad. We're creating an Howard Street SSA right now. That's something that we'll continue to work on as a work plan. So this was a suggestion that I'm throwing out there. Like, I've narrowed it down to those priorities, but then the challenge, I'm gonna stop here, is I don't know if you agree that those are the priorities, right? And that's where it would be helpful if I could take that giant, that really nice detailed document, and then if I could, I'm gonna get to the scoring system in a minute. It's taking me, sorry if it's a little too wordy, but I just want to make sure. Neil did some research and found an example of an action plan very similar to the Evanston Thrives plan, but to me this is easier to read. Like it just feels a little easier. So I want to take all of those actions in the Thrives, put it into a format that's simpler, and then create this priority column for you. You could spend, I don't know if it's an hour, I'm not going to put a timeline on it, so I'm going to take longer or less time, and somehow come up with a priority scoring system, and then we'll average them out and then have a discussion about it, maybe at the May meeting, where we can come to an agreement that these are the things that we're going to make sure we prioritize. Doesn't mean we don't do anything else, but we want to make sure that we're delivering what the council members want prioritized from this plan. Or maybe there's something missing from Thrives that we need to add to the bottom of the spreadsheet. I want to pause it for a second because I don't want to say too much without asking the questions. But what I wanted to do next after I pause is talk about ways that we could score it either, and I'll show some of the British Columbia examples. So are there any questions right now? I want to.
This makes sense.
Any questions?
I think we're heading in the right direction here. Like, I want to avoid getting to a place where we just start talking about Thrives and we're just drowning in so much.
Yeah.
So I think what we're trying to do here is systematize our approach, prioritize all the Thrives actions, kind of fold them in with some other economic development actions, come up with a plan for the year.
Okay.
Right? That's where we're going.
Thank you for saying the word, you said drown, because
Yeah.
I mean, we're buried in potential actions, right? And it's not a bad thing. To remind you, they've indicated both in writing and verbally that they're imagining it as a 10-year plan.
Right.
I never started this project thinking we're doing a 10-year plan. I really wanted something that we're going to bang out the next year.
As we're prioritizing these, some will be fairly obvious. Some we're going to ask ourselves, well, it'd be great, but we don't have the staff or the bandwidth of the budget. So I want to make sure we are making note of that kind of thing. And if we need to add some additional resources to support Thrives and economic development moving forward with the 2024 budget, this is the time to start building a case for that.
Yeah, what's the word? Forebode. I mean, you will.
Foreshadowing?
Yeah.
Foreshadowing when it is.
Right.
forebode.
So a work plan for this year is given our current constraints.
Correct.
But let's flag items that are really important that we would like to get to, but are going to need more budget.
When we come to the city council on May 8th, we will be discussing the staffing that will likely be required to implement aspects of it. Again, it may be the will of the council that we don't need to do any of it. We don't need to change anything, right? So we're we're not right now assuming that you're going to adopt this thing, but already there are things, like, for example, don't prioritize website development. Please don't prioritize laminating paper. We're gonna do that. That's something that we needed to do for a while. We've been in a reaction mode because of COVID. We're recalibrating that anyway. I'm gonna try to make sure that you're only really seeing the things that are kind of above and beyond what we already should be doing. To me, yeah.
Councilmember Dean.
So I have a clarification question. Back to page 12 where we were looking at the ARPA line items. Are those items that fall under the purview of economic development, or is that a broader list?
That's the entire list.
That's the entire list. Because what's confused me in the past is sometimes I've heard you talk about affordable housing, and I don't think of affordable housing as falling under the purview of economic development.
Yep.
I don't know that I mean, I don't want to quibble about what bucket it's in, but if we're talking about the priority for our economic development team, I'm just trying to get clarification as to sort of what that looks like within the structure of our city government.
And I have 1 minute to explain the affordable housing connection related to economic development. Just really quick.
If you think it was ever gonna be within the scope of this work, then yes, but if not,
Okay.
because I didn't think it was a
It's
part of
not.
it.
So
Okay, that's good.
So if we could be quick, you know.
the end game helps deliver the affordable housing goal. But one of my responsibilities as staff member is to assist with property acquisition and disposition. So I would be supporting the community development team with, for example, Lot 1 at Timmon and South Boulevard. I don't run parking, I don't run affordable housing. I'm heavily involved in getting appraisals, seeking out developers. So that it would involve economic development money, it would involve just my staff time. And I want to account for it as a reason that we talked later about and staff. Does that make sense?
I think so. It's starting to. It's adjacent to the work, but I just needed to understand this budget and that's helpful. So thank you.
Paul?
Yes.
I was gonna ask you to go back to see if anybody raised their hand. I think Councilmember Harris has. Councilmember Harris.
Yes, I have. Thank you so much. So I want to be clear. I think you said for the matrix, it will begin with the council, or will it begin with this committee? Because I think it'd be important to start with us at this committee level, even though a bunch of us are part of the council, to give direction to council to say, these are the priorities we see.
Yes, Councilmember Harris, I had jumped to the end game.
Okay.
Clearly, yeah, the intent is we need direction from the committee in the deep dive to recommend to the city council we talked about the word meat as a description of what we're trying to get at, like prioritize
Yes.
the most important pieces to recommend to the council.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure we did that work before it went to council, though, again, most of us are council. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm gonna call on, Member Panisi. Soon to be again. Member Panisi, would you like to make a comment?
I just wanted to, I'm not sure the exact mechanics of it, but I certainly think the input of the MWEBE would be useful, whether it be that this committee asks for their input, whether it be that the MWEBE simply provides input once it's in front of council. But I think there's an opportunity to avoid sort of, siloing the goals when there are some shared desires here.
Any other questions, comments?
I would agree with that and echo. Again, some of us are on that, but I think even if we start that matrix here, give it to EBE, and then kick it back. But there is some legitimate concern that they should see that.
Yeah, we could add a column that indicates is this an MWEBE focused or adjacent or integrated, like we put check mark or score it higher, or we've come up with a structure.
Councilmember Newsom.
I'm not sure how this works into the process, but I really want to make sure that we are getting input from the business community and not just in the quiet of this conference room making up a plan without complete buy-in from the folks that we're really trying to help here. We don't have enough business owners on this committee. So let's at least bring in downtown Evanston, bring in the SSAs, downtown Evanston, Central Street, Main Dempster Mile. Make sure the directors of those organizations are part of the discussion, and whoever they think, from their constituents should be involved. Like, we're not doing a job if they're not a part of this conversation.
Would that include having them literally score their priorities, or would it be some?
That would make sense to me.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And it should go without saying, all the business districts as well as the SSAs.
Even if it's not a business district. There's some that aren't district, right?
Okay.
What are those?
Councilmember Harris, I think that's what Councilmember Burns just said. Not just the SSAs, but businesses and other districts as well.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the much of what we have in our wards, Councilman Harris, I think are districts and not SSAs.
Right, I mean, I think we're using the generic term, but really we're talking about, we've identified the 8 districts.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Any other questions, comments?
So,
You wanted to take us into one other.
you want me to
piece, right?
show you the scoring system, or do you want us
Yes.
to
Oh, it's
divide
ready?
them?
You have it ready?
Well, I have the structure, but I don't have an example of how they would be.
And can I say, while we're waiting for you to pull that up, that I'm very excited about this, as that was one of the first things I mentioned coming to the council, using Matrix and ways in which we can all see what makes sense. So I appreciate you putting pen to paper and making that happen, Paul. Thank you.
And I think before, Paul, while you're setting this up, assuming you're going to go into the British Columbia toolkit as part of this, what was really important to me that I talked to Paul about was finding some toolkit, some other framework, proven framework that could help guide this process, because I think we'll fall quickly into a trap of losing our direction if we don't have something that literally step by step is letting us know what exercises to do, how to evaluate the information that we get from those exercises, potentially even who to involve in the community and how to incorporate their feedback. And one of the tools that is in the packet that I think we all should take a deeper look at following this meeting is the strategic planning toolkit for local economic development that I believe Paul and his team identified. So I think this type of system, supported, I'm sure, by some proven methodology, is a good way to help guide our efforts, especially because this committee, probably unlike the NWB committee, I don't think has extra time to get into a bunch of subgroups and subcommittees. And so I think the more we can simplify this and leverage these type of tools, the easier this will be, the more effective it'll be, frankly, and the further we'll go. So I just wanted to set that up as Paul tries to navigate sharing.
Yeah, so
Here we go.
I've got the, I figured out where to find the matrix, but I was really disappointed that I hadn't seen this earlier in my life. This is a really excellent, I don't know if you've seen it in your profession, Deacon, but this video is really excellent. And then it really steps you through how to take a look at setting up a strategic plan. And it's something that you might consider kind of revisiting year after year as we work through the Thrive plan and implement it and are moving on from that. But please spend some time with it. And if it's something that that you'd like to implement citywide, might be something to consider. So let me go back.
Have you sent us that already?
It's
in the packet. There's a link to it in the
the
packet.
way I did it in the
Okay.
packet. It's not an
That's
attachment.
sometimes this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I probably need to do a better job in my descriptions to check the link versus an attachment. All right, so thank you for being patient while we do it one more time. It's gonna take me just a second. And it's pretty simple, and I'm hoping either we go directly with what they have already in place, or maybe there are other categories that you would like to add to the column headings or remove. So in this case, remember the large spreadsheet I showed you with the actions? I will literally list all the actions on the left of this ranking matrix, right? And then we can decide, you can decide as a committee representing the community what you want these column headings to be, and we can devise a scoring system to reflect that. So again, I'm not sure, you know, maybe it's important. I know Councilmember Harris has talked a lot about, being financially frugal, I guess. I was thinking of Monday night when we were discussing things in the APW. So is the item from Thrive financially realistic? How easy is it to implement? Are there partner benefits? I think there's more things that we need to add to this. I don't have them all. Do they meet MWB goals? This is where you can start scoring that. Are they helping us reach our other, like, climate action resilience? Are we helping with diversity inclusion initiatives? So what are those things that you'd like to see across the top? Maybe that's something that we can work on tonight, because then scoring it, we can score them 1 through 5. Like, that's easy. Like, what are the categories you want?
And what about down the also vertically? I mean, if we,
Right,
like,
so-
there's items that are missing.
So all of these,
Right, no, I'm just wondering, like, is that,
yeah, so, sure. So every one of the Thrive priority action categories will appear on the left. And then anything that you believe that we should be doing that is not in the plan. And then, of course, I'll have some reference to helping affordable housing as lot 1 or whatever it is, right? But there's a couple of things that I'm doing that aren't related to Thrive. So what so we'll have a shared doc. I think there's a way that we can limit it where you're welcome to add, I guess we can just share it and you can add things that you'd like to see on it and then score them. So I think tonight, ideally, if we can come up with the column headings, the scoring part, 1 through 5, I'll have a list of all the actions. You're welcome to add additional actions to prioritize on the way. You think that's a good approach tonight?
So I think it'll be difficult to come up with columns, headings,
Right.
yeah, on the spot. What I would propose is again, I really like I would really love us to use the toolkit and to start from the very beginning of it and just go through each step. And if we have support of this body, I'd like us to try to incorporate much of what Paul has presented today into this toolkit and be prepared to give the committee kind of a full demonstration on how it would work from beginning to end at the next meeting, if that's okay.
I would like to avoid planning to plan to get a plan.
Yeah,
I'm prepared to, accept a recommendation from staff, tweak that, and then move on.
Well, can I weigh in just
Yeah.
in response? So I anticipated that question, and it's also why I said, like, I wish I had seen this years ago, because well, it was last updated in 2020, as it says. But I feel like the plan's before us, right? Thrive spent a year working on it, and if we step through it, and I love this.
And to be clear, I mean the relevant steps, because again, this is a series of different steps where if you read it, you'll see that it literally names 3 different categories of projects, some that are ongoing and need refresh, you want to refresh it, some that are from the beginning. So again, within this toolkit, it can meet us where we are today. I don't think any of us are clear on what this tool can and cannot do for this meeting, which is why I wouldn't like to necessarily plan a plan. I'd like to try to start planning after this meeting and incorporate, again, much of what we've heard Paul mention today, and at least try to do some of those initial steps presented at the next meeting. We can also incorporate, we can figure out how we want to incorporate the feedback from the SSAs and business community. But I would like to get going with this, using this toolkit as a guide, not as a document that we have to follow every step, but just as a guide so that we can start to build some certainty around this. What I don't want to happen is just shooting from the hip at each step. I think might be the only chair right now that chairs a committee that's trying to do a work plan. I'll chair the NWB committee. And trust me, I have some insights because of how I think challenging the process has been there. And I think that what we don't want to do is be making this up as we go along. I think that is I think we will fail if we do that. And so I'd like to work with Paul to really define what this process is going to look like from beginning to end, based on some of the feedback we've gotten today, and then present that at the next meeting.
What I could do to help you along with it is I can take the steps of the British Columbia plan and identify where I think we've already done the work that's recommended in the plan, and then identify gaps and see if we need to revisit. Implied in the plan, there's like the self-assessment. I think there was a lot of assessing going on from the outside, but did we do our own self-assessment? We do have a lot of data. We're doing a comp plan, which is a massive self-assessment. So I like where you're going with this, and I think we can identify the gaps, and hopefully a lot of this work's already done, so we have confidence that we're doing. Yeah. If you haven't been to British Columbia, like one of the reasons I have a high level of confidence in a plan. Vancouver is the urban planning place to be, right? Like that is the place. Do some Google Street views, travel there virtually. It is remarkable, and it's naturally beautiful, but they have a high level of planning that happens there, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be.
I think we all agree we need to prioritize, make some intelligent choices about how we're prioritizing. Whether it's the British Columbia plan or the Manitoba plan or the Newfoundland plan, I don't care. We're going to end up with the same, kind of work product. So I'm prepared to go along with it. Let's just get going.
Okay. And I do have one last. I need a little bit more direction. Would you like for me to propose column headings, or do you want to just?
I think that would
think about it.
That would be probably the most appropriate.
May I add to this conversation?
So let's go member Deacon, and then we'll go member Felicia.
I think that would be helpful if you propose. I agree, like, let's not plan for planning's sake while we make sure we have a process that we can all buy into. One column heading that I would hope that we would see is catalytic opportunity, right? Partner benefits, I'm not really sure what that means. You can decide and determine whether it belongs there, but I think because we're going to need to be making decisions about where to spend our money, like I would really encourage us and push us to be considering catalytic opportunities. How we, the scoring, I'm happy to take your recommendation. I think it would be helpful if we could ask those SSA and business leads to score, and that presented to us for before we are then tasked with making recommendations, that we have that input from the business community. That is an ask or a suggestion that I would have in terms of process. Other than that, I defer to you guys in terms of what you want that to look like.
Thank you. Member Felicia.
Thank you. So, to me, when I would think about pursuing a process like this, the column headings would be related to core values, right? So how well does each item align with core values of our city? And I don't know that we have. I'm looking on our website, I see our mission, it's wonderful. I see some core values around how the city might sort of operate, like it's professional and it's accountable and things like that. But, do we have a set of sort of established core values / priorities that we have sort of memorialized within Evanston?
Values, I'm not sure. Priorities, we are working on a goal setting and priorities process the council is, and we have some upcoming meetings to finalize that work. So we are working on priorities.
So to me, that's where the headings would start from there, and then yes, maybe there's another heading around a catalytic opportunity and another heading around what is our capacity, right? But if every single thing the city goes through, we reinvent what the priority is, when we could just sort of establish that from the get-go, it would save a lot of time.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, before we move on, any other thoughts, comments before we move on? We're good?
I think it's safe to say that if we have some ideas of column headings or, criteria, which we should be keeping in mind, we can forward them to Paul.
Thank you. And I'm also trying to more actively engage all of you on a more regular basis. trying to emerge from whatever the last 3 years have been, and just have kind of a regular series of meetings, whether that's once a month or every 2 weeks. In this case, I'll try, once I get this set up, I'll try to reach out to you all to get some info. So thank you.
And as a guiding principle, let's not get too precious about this. Let's try and keep it simple. And I'm inviting you to disregard recommendations that I make if they just don't fit. They don't feel obligated to accommodate every single suggestion.
Understand, we're not gonna have 45 columns. Right?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you. This is extremely helpful. I did not know how tonight would go, and I think it exceeded expectations, so thank you.
All right, thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
All right, so we're moving on to items for discussion. If someone can move.
This is item B.
Yeah, item B. This is just for discussion,
Yeah.
just like the work plan. We're not taking a vote. We'll still move.
I'll move economic impacts of proposed legacy Evanston residential development at 1621 Chicago Avenue for discussion.
All right, it's been properly moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved by Councilmember Reed, seconded by Member Deacon. So before we have our guests up, I'll give just a brief background on why this is here, how it got here. And so the members of the Legacy Evanston Residential Project have reached out, I would imagine, to all council members at this point to be, and maybe I've even gone beyond that. And it is a practice of mine that I meet with anybody that reaches out, be it a community group or organization or individual. During our conversation, they brought up bringing this to the Economic Development Committee. I said that's an interesting idea. It sort of aligns with the type of items that I would like to see brought to the Economic Development Committee, but let me check with our Economic Development Manager to see if it's a good fit. And Paul, you want to take it from there, because I don't want to put, I don't want to misquote you, but
Sure, I mean,
yeah, if you want to talk about how it aligns with some of the thoughts that you've had about these types of projects, and then I'll pick it up from there.
let me just.
And not to put you on the spot, I can.
No, I don't
Yeah.
feel put on the spot. I
Okay.
appreciate it. So first and foremost, I'll say, and I know there's only two graveyards at, my literal graveyard and your self-declared. We have not had a real estate developer approach the Economic Development Committee to request to present the economic impacts of the study. Not during my tenure. I don't recall. If you can back me up on that. So when I believe it was Mr. Perman, I don't know who it was who reached out to Councilmember Burns, and Councilmember Burns and I talked about it. There was a point made, and let me share this on the screen for the community. Give me a second.
Top one.
Thank you so much. I want to point out that the purpose of the committee is to review and make recommendations concerning all redevelopment proposals, provided that something has been rejected by the city council, and to use the resources persons for assistance and advice on those proposals. So this idea of redevelopment proposal kind of aligned with literally a redevelopment plan on Chicago Avenue. It fit that standard, knowing that it's only a discussion. What we discussed with Mr. Perman and his client, I guess, for lack of a better term, is that we are not the place to discuss zoning or land use matters, and that it would make sense to look at the economic impacts of the project, because there typically is never an opportunity to look at them at a council meeting, because we're always talking at the council level about the zoning and the land use approvals of a project. Typically, the land use purview doesn't touch on economics, and in fact, our developers are often steered away from talking about the economics. Does that make sense? I want to stop talking. Okay. So So we placed it on the agenda at, you know, frankly, at the will of the chair, and it met the standard.
When was that? When did this discussion take place?
We can go through those details in between meetings. You can share what you may, but I just want to highlight that, again, reached out to Economic Development Manager, fit within the scope of the purpose for this committee. We understood that our focus here is only, and I will enforce this, to talk about the economic development impact and not other matters that are before different committees. It's really important that we stick to that. And again, after getting that feedback from our Economic Development Manager, I felt like it was something that during my time as chair, other chairs may disagree, and if that's your prerogative, you have that choice. But during my time, I would like not only the community, but this committee and also the council to get a more well-rounded understanding of all projects that come before the council, so we may make a more informed decision, whatever that may be, for or against. And so ultimately, it was my choice as a chair to discuss this, but to only discuss the economic development impact. And that's what we're here to do today, and I would like us to stick to that.
May I comment on that?
You can comment once after we get the presentation.
Well, no, I would like, it's relevant to what we're talking about now.
It's really no discussion.
So you're not gonna let me comment?
No, you will. Let's get the
No, I want to
presentation.
comment on what we're discussing about the presentation here. I think it's really important
You
to
need to be
know.
quick, or I'm gonna cut it off. 'Cause you
You're
can speak
talking
during
over,
your time.
you're talking over me.
You can speak during your time.
May I speak?
I'm the chair of the meeting.
So I make.
I'm going to
can't
recognize
speak
you momentarily. You need to be quick, because you will have time to speak to whatever you want to when we open it up.
Right, it's, no, I'm not gonna speak to the economic development, I didn't, you know, we'd have a lot of other people here to speak to it too, but, so, you know, hat tip to Ms. Williams and others who prepared it, there's a really wonderful page for transparency on development, on plan development, it's called the proposed plan development page on the city website, and residents monitor that page daily for discussions, for community meetings, and discuss economic impact, everything. And this is a very, very controversial project. We all know that. If residents had seen this placed on the proposed project city's website page for transparency, this room, we all know, would be packed tonight. It's not on here. This feels to the residents underhanded. I'm just going to say that. This page isn't just about actions. It has community meetings. It has everything related to that development. And so needless to say, this evening, residents are very upset. I'm also very concerned. It's in my ward. I wasn't consulted about bringing it here. I certainly would have, you know, had something to say. I would have insisted that it were on that page, because I know residents are always monitoring that page to find out what's coming up next. And there's zero indication of this on here. Now, this is not going to be a well-rounded discussion, because the residents who oppose this and have concerns about the economic impact will not be here this evening, and other experts to discuss it. So I just want to make that statement. Thank you. Yeah, I feel like this was handled wrong. This was, you know,
So,
not handled appropriately at all, and this
if-
should not be on the agenda.
Paul, if you want to speak very quickly to this landing page, and to, you know, I think, again, moving forward, if there's a project in someone's ward, again, that is, to me, I would expect staff to reach out and do that due diligence. But outside of that, and that's just something that we can learn from and improve as we move forward. Outside of that, I was not aware of this landing page. I certainly would not had any issue, and honestly, it's out of the scope of this committee to determine whether or not it will go on this landing page. Just extending it back to the scope that I have as chair is to make sure that it meets the standard of this committee, which it does. To make sure that I checked in with our economic development manager to be sure of that, and to make sure that all the noticing requirements for this meeting's agenda were adhered to, and they were. So that's within my scope. And then I go back, and I'm a father, right? And I got to focus on that. So again, I wouldn't have minded at all. We have a landing page for the demolition project on Jackson and Emerson that I'm sure is similar to this.
It's on this page.
Yeah, allow people to stay in touch. So if you want to speak to that, and then we're going to move forward.
Councilmember, the other thing I would add is, again, we've never done this before.
Yeah.
So there's no, this request has never been made of me. So, so adding it as a discussion, without any decision-making happening, you know, we have a standard 48-hour OMA requirement. We posted this on Friday, around 6:30 6:30 or 7 p.m. It's been out there, for 4 or 5 nights at this point. I understand if I had known that this existed.
Wait, there was a planning page? You didn't know that the plan development page existed?
I didn't know that it was set up this way where there's like I use it all the time for.
Yeah, we all use, I mean, this is,
Right, so what I'm saying is if I had known, I would have put it here. There's nothing to hide, so. And then, the third point was that again, I already said it, but we met the standards, and I'm sorry, it's not on this webpage.
so do you think, so with regard to a development like this, which we all know is high, like resident turnout, 100 will turn out for this, because there's great concern. So should they be scanning every single committee meeting to see if because it's not on the page? I mean, this is a lack of transparency. This page is meant, wait, let me just finish.
So
Let me finish.
you
This
need to be
page is
brief, and
meant,
I'm gonna cut it off.
this page is meant for transparency around plan development. That's why we have this page. So this is not on there, so this is a lack of transparency. And I think we should not be holding this meeting tonight without properly placing it on the page that is up here for the sake of transparency around development. Nobody knew this clearly, though.
Our code doesn't require that we post every agenda item on this page, but I understand your point, I do.
And so
If I knew it existed, I would have.
yeah, so I just want to wrap this up. Again, the typical place where all matters are presented for consideration are the agendas. And so, yes, I don't necessarily expect community members to do that. I do expect the members of this body to review the agenda items and to provide whatever awareness they see fit around the items that are noticed. I do expect that. And so, but moving forward, it is in order, and we're going to continue to have a discussion. If there's another economic development committee meeting prior to this moving on to whatever the next step is, I'll have it back again. We can talk about this again next month if there's time, and you'll have a month to invite interested parties to present. And I will, let's just settle that now. When is this going to council or standing committee, or what's the next step for this?
So I want to be clear, there was a reference in the memo based on we should probably invite the presenter up, but there was a reference in the memo that, or their presentation, and I said it was going to May 22nd. I don't believe that that's been confirmed. I don't think necessarily that's part of the process. I'll ask them to clarify that date. I can also, while the presentation's happening, check in with my colleague Liz Williams to see what the timeline is.
And when is the next economic development committee?
May 24th.
So assuming it doesn't, and we're going to move forward, and if our speakers can prepare to present, assuming it's not on May 22nd, we will have this. I will be chair one more time in May, and if they are comfortable showing up to talk about this again, or at least to field questions and comments that the community or this body may have, I will be completely comfortable with getting this back on an agenda again, assuming there's time to do that. So yeah, I'm going to welcome up our guests to speak to us today about this issue. Thank you for joining us.
I don't know what you want me to put on the screen, so if you can direct me. Do you want this?
Yeah, that's fine. It's just to start. Let me just introduce ourselves. I'm Jonathan Herman. Legacy, most of you know me. It's good to see you again. Thank you, Chairman Burns, for giving us the opportunity tonight. We appreciate that. I guess one of the things, Paul, I wanted to ask you, and Chairman Burns, is how far back do you want us to go? I think many of you are pretty familiar already with the project and some of its iterations, so I don't want to bore you or waste time, but if you want us to do a very quick synopsis of the current project using the PowerPoint slides that we gave to Paul, we can do that. But if you want us to dive right into,
I think, unless anybody agrees, I think diving into the economic development components is probably most appropriate.
okay, then we will dispense with the
You can give a really brief overview of the project, just in case some of our members are, if some of our members are completely unaware of it, just very brief, just like the,
Okay.
it's
And I've
this
got,
many units, that kind of
and
thing.
forgive me for it
Going
not
to
being
economic
electronically available, but I've got some additional.
As well, Johnson, and I'm Jeff Michael with Verizon Realty, I'm the owner and developer of the project. We're here to discuss. So very briefly, 1621 Chicago Avenue. This is on the east side of Chicago Avenue, mid-block. It's a parcel that we own. We've owned it since 2012. We bought it when we purchased the Marion, which is immediately to the south of this property. And we own and operate the Marion as a senior living community. It was always our intention, when we were done renovating, repositioning the Marion, to develop this parcel we're talking about tonight. So it's about a half-acre parcel. It's shown on your screen right now in the yellow box. And the proposed plan, quite simply, is to build a 140-unit apartment building for rent, Class A building with the type of amenities that you're accustomed to seeing in Class A buildings: swimming pool, fitness, high-end finishes, parking, 57-car parking space, a rooftop deck, and about 7,000 square feet of retail on the first floor. That is in a very brief nutshell.
Do you have a visual version of this at all?
Of
Yeah,
what
I have
this-
a laptop.
I will try to, how many pages is it?
4.
Okay, I'll scan it really quick and send it to the.
Okay, forgive me for not.
No.
having myself up. Okay. So, just using this bullet outline for discussion, if we could, I'll start by saying that, we think this is in the words of Lisa, a catalytic opportunity for Evanston, and fits with some of the challenges that downtown Evanston and all of Evanston, for that matter, are facing right now. I remember the many years that I sat in this room and other rooms talking about how Evanston could reposition itself. And at that time, the 1990s and early 2000s, the focus was primarily on a combination of residential density in downtown with commercial office space. In addition to that, having as many entertainment options that we could provide that would be the catalyst to inspire more retail, more restaurants, and more service businesses in downtown, and feed those with customers, those that are already established, as well as attract new businesses. We're obviously in a much different era now. Evanston is unlikely, like many downtowns of its size, to be a major office center. We're going to probably continue to see a diminution of the number of square feet that are put on the market or available for rent for offices. We still have a core group of office buildings which have seen some decline in occupancy. We still have some major centers, particularly in the nonprofit sector with Northwestern, Rotary, and others that are headquartered in downtown or have buildings in downtown. But we all know that the number of times a week that people are coming into the office is much less than it was pre-pandemic. And so it would appear that Evanston, downtown Evanston in particular, that its future is going to rest largely on trying to attract more density, more residences within the downtown, going back to that same concept that we looked at and that we put into place a number of years ago, with that continued push for more events and more activities, as the Thrive report strongly suggested. So we think that this project, bringing 140 units, 240 some residents to downtown, fits with what downtown Evanston needs to have right now and needs to focus on. The second thing is that at this time there is, without any argument really, a real housing shortage, not only in Evanston but through the entire north suburban market. So the city staff asked us to get an updated report done from our marketing company, Integra Realty Resources, which we did, And that was presented to the Land Use Commission, a month and a half ago or so. And what their findings are, is that this is a market right now. If you go from Howard Street up to the Lake County, Cook County border, that right now for apartment living is 96, 97% occupied. That's a pretty big number, and that's creating a real thirst and a real demand for more housing. That's basically considered full occupancy. The second thing that has happened is that since the pandemic, people are now, in a sense, coming out of their hiding and are becoming more comfortable forming new households or changing households. That there was a real lull in that kind of activity for 2 or 3 years, quite understandably, but now that's coming about again. So that's pushing demand. The third thing is, besides the low vacancy, is high interest rates, which are taking some people who would have been in the ownership market and converting them to the rental market. So you put all those three things together, and you've got a significant demand for housing in Evanston, which, I mean, I think you'd rather be in that kind of position than a community that is crying for demand. You've got this is actually a good place to be at this time. The question is, how do you fulfill that demand? How do you provide the supply that is necessary to meet that desire to live in Evanston, not just downtown Evanston, but throughout. So we think this project offers that opportunity. The third area that we think this brings in terms of economic development is affordable housing. So we are meeting the IHO requirement, which in this case would provide 10 units of affordable housing. Obviously, those units have to be expressed in the same distribution in terms of studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom as the rest of the market rate units. But in addition to that,
yeah, we can move on from affordable housing.
Yeah.
That feels more
we've already covered
like
that.
another.
Okay,
another
then we'll go.
yeah.
Okay. The fourth thing is we're meeting the gold LEED standard, and so this is a transit-oriented development. This is the kind of development that Evanston has really prided itself on, and we are going to be using the materials and the tools that get us to that place where we have a very low impact on the climate. So now let's go to the fiscal economic analysis. That was sent out to you, and I think Paul's going to bring it up. I'm not going to go through obviously every page of it, but want to give you some of the highlights and then open it up for questions.
You want to tell me which page?
This is the market study from Integra, so you have to go beyond that. I don't know what order. I don't remember what order this is on. Is our study is the economic study after this? Yes.
Yeah, there it is.
Okay. Thanks, Paul. So the project proposes to be 140 units, which translates to a population of 213 or so people. It will have, using a standard model that comes out of Rutgers University that many communities use, it will yield, we expect, 5 K-8 students and 3 high school students. Because there's always this question of, okay, you build new housing, what is the impact of that new housing in terms of kids and the school system and the cost of the school system for absorbing those additional students. So we have included the costs of those additional students in all of our economic equations.
So I think, can you tell me as you go through the pages, what page you want me to show?
Yes, you're on the
right page?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And now jump to the next page. Like most projects of this type, the biggest impact financially will be from additional property taxes that it yields. So currently, the property generates about $110,000 in property taxes, which of course are shared throughout all the taxing districts, with the schools being the majority of the majority recipients. revenues. When the project is fully occupied, by 2026, well, it's 90% occupied in 2026, so let's call it 2028. When it's fully occupied, the property taxes are expected by then to be $817,000. So it would multiply by a factor of 7 or 8 from what it's generating right now. That's a pretty significant leap, and again, will help all of the taxing districts. You can jump to the next page. In addition to sales taxes, property taxes, there are sales taxes that come out of the project, and there's two types of sales taxes, essentially. One, from sales taxes that are generated by the business that will be on the first floor, which is going to be a restaurant. And so that will yield both restaurant sales taxes as well as liquor taxes in Evanston. And we've given some estimates of what that would be. And all that, of course, goes to the city. Well, the city's share of the sales taxes goes to the city. Obviously, there's more that goes to the state. The second is the sales taxes that are generated by residents themselves living in the building, and those are expenses, or those sales, those buying and consumer spending take the shape of both what are called convenience goods as well as consumer goods. And we've done a split up. We don't have to go into the detail of that for tonight. There are also income taxes, and I'll just skip through this. So in addition to that, it will yield income taxes or share of the city's share of income tax, motor fuel taxes, auto wheel taxes, the city sticker, utility taxes, telecommunications taxes, and cable franchise fees, all of which we've identified are additional dollars coming into the city that currently are not being derived. The other big piece is the hefty construction and permit fees that the city of Evanston levies on any new development, and those for a project of this size are very significant, to the tune of over $1.5 million over just a couple years. And so that would be the first immediate infusion of money that the city would get before the building is even occupied. So it's a way of essentially a down payment, if you will, to the city to provide and offset some of the city's additional costs, but also it's a revenue generator clearly for the city. We also, you're not correct, thanks, you're on the right page. We also want to provide some honest accounting here, recognizing that it's not just all revenues that it's coming to the city, but that with 213 new residents, there's a cost to the city. The cost of the additional services, and in our calculation, a cost of perhaps 2 more employees that the city would need to bring on over time in order to accommodate those additional residents. So there's certain thresholds at a certain point where if you keep adding people to a community, it's going to cost you. It's not all free, and we wanted to be, as I said, honest about that. And I will tell you that most fiscal analysis that you will see around don't do this. They just tell you, oh, here's all the revenues that are coming in. It's going to be great for the community. We wanted to show what the cost is for the city. In addition to that, we also wanted to show what the cost would be for the school. So the same kind of thing, policy, you want to just go up slightly, and that's in the tables that we have put together, show the cost of each student based upon the Illinois School Report Card and the operating expense per student. So we're adding to that. So in conclusion, and then I'll turn it over to Jeff as a couple more remarks. We are pleased that we can bring a project of significant fiscal impact to a city that right now faces some real challenges financially. I know that you heard a report just recently from your Budget and Finance Committee about, because of declines in the stock market, seeing pension funds, the ratio of pension funding that is now, that Evanston now faces is closer to 55%, whereas a year or two ago it was up at 65%. So Evanston long-term is going to have to figure out not only how does it pay its pension obligations, but also how does it pay for continued costs of services. And we think this project offers, not the solution to that by any means, but contributes to helping the city with those expenses and those obligations. I'm not going to repeat what's up on it. I think we've reached the point. I will say that at the end of the day, looking at a 13-year period of time from the time that the project first begins to pay construction and permit fees out until 2023, 2024 to 2035, the proposed project would generate, not just for Evanston City, but for all of the taxing districts, about $12 million in cumulatively. However, to be fair, again, we take that back by offering what the net present value is of that money, because obviously $1 today is not the same as $1 12 years from now, and so that comes out to about $8 million. Again, trying to do honest reporting. I'll turn it to Jeff.
Yeah, just a couple points to add. I mean, for the reasons that Jonathan has stated here, I think this is the kind of project, obviously I'm biased, I own it, but I think that this is the kind of project that Evanston really should rally behind in terms of just the economic impact, just the catalyst and what it would do to the vibrancy of downtown. This is what we need here to bring this density of people to patron our stores, patron our restaurants. I just drove through town now, looking for a place to eat before I came to the meeting, and I was just shocked at like how many empty storefronts, how many restaurants have closed, and it's changed even in the last 5 years because of COVID, because of the pandemic, and we need to bring people back. And I have a major investment in that block. I own this land. I'm a stakeholder here. Excuse me, Claire. So I'm invested in here, and I care about what goes on in this block, and I really feel that this project will complete what's going on that 1600 block of Chicago Avenue, bring that vibrancy, bring that economic impact to downtown Evanston. So I just wanted to add that. And I think if this, we're lucky in the sense that I own this land. Given the situation that we're now with interest rates and the environment that we're in, if we don't do this, I don't think anybody will be doing this for the next 5-6 years until the economy stabilizes again. We're going to be sitting there staring either at that strip center or an empty lot. So I think the time is now. You have the right person, the right developer. We have our capital lined up, and we're ready to go once we get the approval to do so.
Thank you for comments. We'll open it up to any questions. Again, let's keep everything focused on economic development. I think the two things the one thing I cut off was affordable housing. Again, to me, that veers into considerations for a different committee, although I know the issue is somewhat adjacent, but steer clear of that. I think there was also a little bit of financing considerations that are probably better for the Finance and Budget Committee when we talk about pensions and some of those things. So let's try to stay away from that, and let's focus squarely on economic development impact as we can. But let's open it up, starting with Councilmember Reed. Unless Councilmember Kelly, I want to.
No, go ahead.
Okay, Councilmember Reed.
Empty store.
I appreciate the particularly presenting the potential impact, the cost to the city, not just the revenue. I think that's something that a lot of developments are missing, so I appreciate that. We've had conversations. I do think that the affordable housing is not going to go into it, but the reason I think it's important to just name it and what the number is because we have a workforce that cannot afford to live here, and we want people to be able to live within our city and work within our city. And so I think that is important. I would love to hear more about the direct impact of construction and employment opportunities that will be available there. That also might be better for MWEBE, but
I did fail to mention that we've been having a discussion with Nate Norman, and it's one of our public benefits. We've pledged and agreed to enter a workforce development agreement whereby we would attempt to hire for permanent jobs in the building once it's up and running, and also requiring our general contractor to hire a certain number of apprentices and train them so that they would have, jobs, construction jobs. So, this will be part of our public benefit
And
plan.
can you remind me of what the square, and if you said it, sorry, I must have blanked out for a second, but what the square footage, for the retail spaces on the ground floor?
7,000,
And is that two, okay,
two of them,
okay. What's the
30.
split?
3,500 each. About.
Okay. And do you have an idea of what the rent will be?
The market in that area is probably about $35 a square foot.
Okay. And how does that compare with what is currently, with the, you know, there was a lot of cleaners and,
Yeah, a couple, well, one was, I mean, you know, found was forced out. I know you might see differently, and the cleaners now is being forced out, and I know. So
there are 2 or 3 businesses currently located,
There's two there right now.
two there now. Do you have any idea how the rent will
It's about
change?
the same.
About the same?
Yeah.
Okay, and will those folks, were they intending to come back, or do they have?
I mean,
La Costa Nita, we've signed a new lease with La Costa Nita in our, because we own the building next door.
Right.
So we're actually working through a build out, with them now, so we're happy to, we're able to relocate them and keep them going.
Mhm.
The cleaners, unfortunately, we've tried very hard to relocate them to 2 other spaces, and it just wasn't working for her, so, she's going to be finding another place.
But I
My
think the question
understanding
is
is
why
Claire
are they
is-
staying? Right, you weren't wondering if the rent is the same. Why-
Well, yeah, I'm wondering if the rent is the same, if there was an opportunity for them to
We
be
tried-
able to either
We
stay or
tried
come
to
back.
get them to move, the cleaners is difficult, she's got the a rack, drying rack.
Yeah,
that goes
yeah,
around,
yeah.
and she couldn't figure out a way to get that in the space that we have available for her,
Okay,
that's my understanding.
And then that would be a smaller space.
We had 2 spaces for, we had one that was bigger, and we had one that was
In
smaller.
the current space, so I mean, you're saying.
The
rent
Marriott
is-
building.
Councilman Reed, if you could finish.
yes,
Yeah, and then we'll move it around.
Yeah,
Everybody
yeah.
will have an opportunity.
I think for now that, that ends my, line of questioning. That ends my line of questioning.
I would, if I could just add that, you know, if any, you know, landowner in this town has been a champion of small independent businesses, it's this one. If you look at the Marion, the history of the tenants in the Marion, and if you look at that, the strip going north, it's not chain businesses. It's all been small independent businesses that have been your tenants. And so that is the expectation that we would continue, to have and provide opportunities for independent, local owned business.
And just as an effort to try to discourage people to bring up affordable housing, the inclusionary housing ordinance that is requiring the affordable housing in this project feels more like a planning and development issue than an economic development one, which is why I want us to steer clear. Councilmember Newsome was next, and then we'll go to Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First thing is a point of reference, the retail space in the new Bode project, Tapestry Station, I think they're calling it, is for $25 a square foot, I believe, so just a point of reference. And then a question about the financial projections here, which are, you know, really impressive, and their projections apply whatever margin of error is applicable to anything looking forward. But my question is, to what extent are these scalable with the height of the building? Obviously, it's not completely linear. But if you could offer some kind of guidance, I would be interested to hear.
Your property tax is pretty linear. The property tax is based upon square foot of building, the revenue that's brought in by the building. So to the degree that the building gets larger, smaller, I'd say you're relatively linear on your property tax, which is one of the larger drivers of the revenue base. That's in proportionality of,
Yeah.
you know, and sales tax too. I mean, I think it's relatively linear.
It is fairly linear.
I would say so.
I mean, I think the sales tax is driven by the number of
Yeah.
people that are in it. So if you have more or less, then your sales tax is gonna change accordingly.
So theoretically, if the building were just to pick out a random number, half the height, cut everything in half.
I would say so. Your permit fee gets cut in half in theory. Yeah.
Okay, so roughly.
Yeah, I think it's a fair
Roughly
way
linear.
it's a fair way to look
Okay,
at it.
fair enough, that answers my question. Thank you.
Councilmember Wood.
Well, I think Jonathan was driving at what my comment was going to be, which is that I appreciate you providing us with these numbers, but unless we have a comparative, number about what would a building built as a right within the zoning, what would it bring in? Then these numbers are just sort of a shiny object to me. You know, we could get, higher numbers all over the city if we change the zoning. I know I'm not supposed to be talking about that, but,
I'm on easy, but
okay, all right, no, but I'm just
But you're
saying,
good,
unless we know, what is the delta here, then this is a lovely number, but, compared to what? So, you know, that, I mean,
I guess
thank you
it's
for
compared to
coming
what's
with that.
there, compared to what's there now, is what the comparison
No,
would
I
be.
think that it would be the potential. What could be built? I mean, you have provided what's there now.
This is the potential. I mean,
No, this is one potential. What I'm saying is, what would, compared to a building that is built as of right? I think that's what Jonathan was just talking about, figuring out how we calculate that, because I think that's what we have to make a decision based on.
And I think a way to look at this without getting into, by right language is just a smaller, building, less, you know, less units, less tenants. I think going to council, you can, you know, I think that's the question that's being asked, is if we can see what it would look like with less tenants, less units, what the economic impact would be at that point. Council member, Reed, did you have another question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just, wanted to, some of us were just at Climate Action, you're not gonna like this, don't you? We were just at a Climate Action, event, yesterday. And one of the things that our mayor brought up, and this relates to economic development, is that we, in our areas that are most transit oriented, in many places across the city, do not allow large developments. This is one of the areas where we do allow larger developments. It's in a transit oriented development area, which if we're reducing the number of parking spaces and we're not, you know, if people don't own cars and using public transit, that keeps more money local, and flowing in our economy. If we can, and, you know, again, just having more people on the streets in our downtown, which is suffering now, clearly creates more economic opportunity within walking distance. I personally am a fan of allowing more density and more units, particularly, you know, we're looking at 2, 3 bedrooms.
Yeah.
So, well, no, the reason I'm saying this is because that has to do with economic development. We can't untether the fact that there are housing units. I mean, that's why I'm pushing for building new units on Howard, because my businesses need more people on the streets walking around within walking distance. And this is, you know, especially in our downtown, this is where we need to put these kinds of developments. And, you know, I personally would have, there are plans that came before that I would have enjoyed more because it was, you know, more density. You know, there are really some neat design elements that I think
the density language that makes people, it would make this sort of uncomfortable. Just talk about it as, again, more people.
Well, that's density.
Yeah, but
that's the
it's
word
also,
for that.
it feels like a P and D word, so.
Economic
But
density.
I
All
think
right.
your,
But
yeah, your comments are
my
submitted,
comments are submitted.
unless you have any other.
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember
Yeah, I
Kelly.
just want to add 8 to 10 stories would also add a lot of density.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I think we should consider that. And I think that's a, you know, that's a lot of buildings, 8 to 10 stories. And I would ask in terms of economic development that our small businesses that are there, that they not be forced out until, you know, this whole thing goes through. I know. I mean, that's important for our city to have dry cleaner there. I think there's also a massage and something done, just anything you can do to keep those businesses there right now and not push them out in anticipation of this going through, or in just creating up these storefronts, because that does happen a lot. So I just ask that in the name of economic development that you really retain those businesses and not create an empty storefront.
Any other comments, questions? So what I will say is, if it does come back, if there's support from the legacy group to come back, and also if we have time, I think you can come back and present what a project with less units would do to the economic impact. And in addition, similar to what we're doing with Evanston Thrive, just in case we're not able to bring this back, I think this is something that will complement it either way. Can we, one, post this recording on the landing page that Councilmember Kelly referred to earlier in our meeting? And can we set up a Google Doc, similar to what we've done with Evanston Thrives, where people can comment on this particular issue? And they can register their feedback, and then whether we can meet again or not here, we can make sure that that is included in the packet at the next step, whether, I don't know if it's going to plan and development next or city council.
So just to be clear, you're asking for, some kind of, Google document that people can express their input on economic impact
Right,
associated with this presentation?
correct.
Yeah, we can figure out a way to do that.
Google
Yes,
Form,
yes,
I
we
think,
can put
might be
it-
the way to do it.
Yeah, I mean,
We did something like that for the districting committee to
Yeah.
collect input, so there's a model.
And I would just ask so that it's not like selectively choosing its development and selectively potentially promoting it, that, and for every single development on here, I would ask that you schedule this. So for the HODC project on Church Street, where you're talking about maybe the city giving $4 million, giving away a public parking lot, please put that on the agenda too. Put it all. Why just this one? Why stop here?
We don't.
Well, we never have. This is the first time you've chosen to take
It
this
was
one
the
from
first
the
time
first
that I was
board,
asked,
so
so I did it.
you were asked by them, and so you did. So
HODC.
And
I would say,
did they come in?
no, it's
they
still,
come-
we're still, the land swap hasn't happened.
Oh, yeah, the 4 million, but
So I think,
You're-
you know,
you're-
all of the
you're
developments. if
you're
this is
requesting
your-
it, and it will be met. I think the
I
more
just
the
think
merrier.
otherwise it looks very selective.
It is not. They requested,
This is unusual. It's never
I
done.
ran it by staff, and I felt like it was a good idea after talking to staff. I think your idea is also a good idea, and you can do that too. Paul?
I promise to be short. If we are going to do future developments to showcase economic impacts, I think it would help for us in a discussion at a future meeting to discuss how we want that to appear in the process.
I would agree.
And that's,
Before we schedule any more, let's have that discussion.
Correct, okay, correct. And then I also want to make sure that in terms of, I don't want to get caught up in bureaucracy or, let me just say this. If I'm being asked to make sure to reach out to, if I'm looking at an agenda and I see that the agenda is in a specific ward, I will be glad to reach out to that council member if that has not been practiced. Because what we do is either the chair has this conversation with, but I will do as told. This is an easy phone call or text, hey, this item is on the agenda. But what possibly could happen just in practice is that then I'm in the middle of debate between two council members. One doesn't want.
I think the easier thing to do is just send once, whether I'm the chair, whoever's the chair, just send the agenda, out to everybody so they're aware of it. And I think that would, so you don't have to select any specific,
We'll work on it.
yeah, items out, but just send it so they're aware of it. Again, I thought the notice period was enough. If it's not, we can try to get that out further to the council members so they're aware of what's on the agenda.
Okay, and I just, one suggestion also. Jeff and I have worked in a number of communities around the Chicago area and beyond. I can tell you that Evanston sort of stands out as being a community that doesn't require this kind of fiscal economic impact analysis. Almost every other community, for a project of significance, it's not going to be for every little project, but for the project of significance, just about every community requires that as part of the package that has to be submitted before it reaches consideration by a plan commission or a city council.
Including financial solvency and viability, including financial solvency and viability. Also,
Yeah,
which
you're right. So it's something you might want to think about. Not that I want to add more to your burden of analysis.
No, I don't think
that
it's, I think it shouldn't be. Again, we signed up to do this work, and that's why I firmly stand behind this decision. I agree. I think this is something we should have been doing. The fact that this is our first time is really a failure on our part and not the applicants and not the community members who I think also would have benefited from this information. So I firmly stand behind this, and if this sets off a series of different protocols that we can develop around evaluating the developments in this way, that I'm proud to have initiated that.
And we agree that.
Yes,
Councilman Reed.
I will just say that I don't think this needs to come back to economic development. I think that, you know, as you suggested, we can post the video, folks can give public comment at council. I don't think this is the main issue that folks are having with this development. It's more about height and density and other things. So let those arguments happen where they should happen and not bring those arguments here, which I think if we did invite that level of public comment, particularly at the time that's being voted on, this will turn into something that it's not really supposed to be.
I agree, yeah.
So I would just ask that we do have that discussion though, whether we're gonna proceed doing this or not before we invite more of it. So we can all come
Yeah, I
to
agree.
agreement.
Absolutely.
It does not even have to be at this committee. If it's standard in other communities, it's probably
It
part
could
of
be
the
a planning and development or whatever, yeah.
Right.
I'm not convinced it has to be in this
Right.
committee.
No,
I
I'm-
like having the discussion.
Every PUD that's ever come before us, this is part of the package. It's part of the PUD package that a developer, comes in with these, whatever their numbers are.
I think the point is though, it's not discussed, it's not a part of the land use commission scope, so they don't have any comments related to it.
So
It's only
it's
discussed
part
at
of-
council,
It's discussed at part of
which we don't, but that's a standing committee of all council members, and we don't benefit from our other community, businesses really that make up this committee, or should make up the committee, but we don't benefit from having it at this committee, which not only has council members, but also community members who volunteer.
But I think you're looking at something in isolation, and I think it has to be looked at as a total,
More holistically.
which is what happens at PND.
And there are many other committees that could go before, equity and empowerment too, to analyze. I mean, we could go on and on and on with all the committees that, I mean.
And we don't have to do this for every product. As the chair, I hold the right, if I feel like it's within the scope, I'm gonna do that. If we want to continue to do it for other projects, great. If we don't, I think it's prerogative of each chair to make that call. But what I do want to make sure happens is that, we get, just to emphasize, we get that, Google Doc up. And we could probably cut down this meeting, just edit it up, so it's just this issue. Make sure we put that on the landing page and get the Google Doc up so people can provide comments. And please make sure that's in our packet at P&D as well, as council. Seeing no additional matters before us, I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
If your card, particularly, man, if your, I have your contact information all over.